At exactly 0511 hours local time, the starboard lookout on the U.S. warship freezes for half a second. Then he leans toward the sound-powered phone and speaks the words that wake the entire crew. Multiple small craft bearing 086 closing fast on the bridge. No one asks him to repeat it. 18 nautical miles west of the Strait of Hormuz, the sea is calm, but the tactical picture is not. 3 surface contacts already appear on the Combat Information Center screens. Low profile, no AIS, no navigation lights running dark in the gray light just before dawn. Speed, 32 knots and rising. No response to the automated challenge. 3 Iranian fast boats closing on a U.S. Navy destroyer valued at over $1.8 billion. A crew of 300 sailors, and less than 13 minutes before a boarding ladder and a metal grappling hook attempt to bite into American steel, the captain is already on the bridge. He does not run. He is simply there, hands behind his back, eyes forward. That alone changes the temperature of the air. But what the elite Iranian team does not know at this moment is that those 3 boats are not the full operation. They are merely the first layer of a far deeper trap. And the U.S. Navy is about to read every one of them. To understand why 3 Iranian boats were racing toward a U.S. destroyer, before dawn, you must understand the board. The Strait of Hormuz is the planet's energy artery. Through this bottleneck, barely 33 kilometers wide, passes 20% of the world's oil every day. Whoever controls perception over Hormuz controls prices, controls the narrative, and controls the pressure on Washington. That is the logic of the Iranian strategic calculus. Tehran is not seeking open war against the U.S. Navy. It knows it would lose within hours. What it seeks is something more subtle, a gray zone victory, that gray area between peace and war where a single propaganda video can be worth more than a missile. One image, just one of Iranian commandos touching the hull of a U.S. warship, would be worth months of political pressure against the White House. To execute it, the Revolutionary Guards have trained for years with their fiberglass boghammer boats capable of exceeding 45 knots and designed precisely for asymmetric warfare against far larger surface units. Their confidence comes from geometry: 3 boats, 3 angles, a fixed target on predictable transit. What they did not calculate is that the destroyer in front of them was not a target. It was a floating sensor with teeth, and the board was already being read from the other side. At 0514 hours, the range falls below 11 nautical miles, and then the Iranians do something no fisherman would ever do. The 3 boats separate. One drifts wider to port. The other 2 continue straight, one slightly behind the other, using the lead boat's wake as cover. It is subtle, but in a military environment, the subtle is what kills. One boat is shaping the attack, another is screening it, the third is the bait. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical action officer sharpens the image with electro-optical sensors. Grainy shapes appear on the screen, narrow hulls, outboard motor spray, clustered thermal signatures low and compact. And then one of the operators leans toward the screen. Possible 4th heat source on lead boat, stern mounted. No one yet says what it could be. The captain gives the order without raising his voice. Set reinforced watch. Deck security teams to stations. Maintain control. No alarm sounds. The order runs through the ship like electricity through a wire. Hatches open, boots strike steel. A pair of armed sailors moves into position along the exposed deck. On the bridge wing, binoculars rise in unison. Then the LRAD, the long-range acoustic device, is activated, a long-range acoustic hailing system that can project a human voice over 3,000 meters with surgical clarity. Imagine a speaker capable of speaking directly into a man's ear from 3 kilometers away over the roar of outboard motors and the dawn wind. That is the tool. The warning rips across the morning water in English and in Farsi Iranian small craft. This is a U.S. Navy warship. You are closing in a hostile manner. Withdraw immediately. Only static returns. And motors. The first clear visual image arrives at 8 nautical miles. The electro-optical camera stabilizes for 1 second, enough to turn suspicion into form. The lead boat carries no fishing gear, no nets, no crates, no lines, only men. Several. Dark clothing, compact silhouettes. One sitting low near the bow, another leaning inward, holding something long crossed over his knees. Then the rear boat rises over a wave, and the camera catches it. A ladder. It is not a rope. It is not cargo piping. It is a compact boarding ladder lashed to the side of the hull. On the bridge, the air seems to lose a degree of temperature. Captain says the tactical action officer from below his voice tensor. Now I recommend classifying as probable armed boarding threat. The captain answers immediately, do it. If you were the commander on that bridge, would you choose A, open warning fire immediately, or B, maintain discipline and wait for visual confirmation of the weapons? Comment below. At 0521 hours, the rotors of the MH-60R Seahawk begin to spin. What follows changes the entire geometry of the engagement. The MH-60R Romeo is no ordinary helicopter. It is the most advanced anti-submarine and anti-surface version of the Seahawk, valued at over $40 million per unit, equipped with APS, 1.5.3 multimode radar, high-resolution electro-optical and infrared sensors, and the ability to operate as a floating sensor node in the sky. In simple terms, it is an American eye with turbines capable of seeing in the dark, recording every movement and projecting physical pressure from the air. The helicopter lifts off the flight deck with a roar that drowns the murmur of the sea. The rotor wave hits the deck, the chains vibrate. The aircraft noses forward, descends along the starboard side, and inserts itself between the ship and the Iranian lead boat. Now, the commandos are no longer running only toward a warship. They do so beneath a helicopter. The Seahawk's crew activates the electro-optical and infrared systems. The image arrives sharp and undeniable: dark uniforms, body armor, compact rifles. A man gripping the handrail beside the boarding ladder, another crouched over a bundle near the center line that looks like additional climbing gear. The pilot makes the first pass. Low, loud, controlled. Close enough that the rotor washes that downward column of air, the blades generate, strikes the boats with full force. Water explodes around the Iranian craft, their bows leap more violently. One commando raises an arm to shield from the spray. Another turns, momentarily blinded by the turbulence. Imagine a portable hurricane hanging from the sky, controlled by an American pilot with surgical discipline. Then comes the aerial warning: Iranian craft. This is a U.S. Navy helicopter. Break off your approach immediately. This time there is a response. 3 words in accented English: hold your course. An order issued to a U.S. ship in international waters. A tactical insolence. At 0522, the lead boat is less than 1.5 nautical miles. The commando in front rises halfway up and drops his arm in a clear signal forward. Go. The screening boat cuts in tighter. The ladder boat slips into its wake. From the bridge wing, a lookout shouts what the cameras already confirmed. They are making their run. The captain watches 1 second more. He does not raise his voice. Cold blood is his weapon. Do you believe American discipline can contain a boarding without shooting the men? If you believe in the power of the U.S. Navy, comment 1. At 0522 hours and 30 seconds, the destroyer does something the Iranians had never seen in their drills. It begins to blind them electronically. Inside the Combat Information Center, the electronic warfare officer receives the order with a short nod: activate SLQ 32 inches aggressive mode. The AN SLQ 32V6 is one of the most sophisticated electronic warfare systems in the world, valued at over $80 million per installation. It is not just a signal detector. It is a digital god of war capable of identifying, classifying, and attacking electromagnetic emissions in milliseconds. Imagine an electronic brain that listens to every radio, every radar, every command transmission within a radius of 200 kilometers and can selectively silence those it deems hostile. That is the tool. The consequences are immediate. The radio links between the 3 Iranian boats and their coastal command fill with noise. Coordination transmissions break. The signal from the observer drone, which until that moment had been passing real-time images to a command post on the Iranian coast, degrades until it becomes unusable. On the lead boat, a commando lifts the handset and hears only static. He looks at his commander. The commander looks toward the coast. No one answers. That is the electronic lobotomy, severing the enemy's nervous system without firing a bullet. Meanwhile, on deck, the American sailors show what no manual can teach: iron discipline. Imagine being 23 years old, holding an M2 Browning in your hands, watching 3 boats with armed commandos closing at 40 knots, and keeping your finger off the trigger because the captain has not yet given the order. That is not training. That is a military culture built over 80 years. The Master Chief walks the deck security line without raising his voice. A pat on the shoulder here, a vest adjustment there. Breathe, Wait for the order. No one fires until the captain says so. The young sailors nod. Hands stop trembling. Aboard the Iranian boats, the situation is opposite. With no communications, no coordination, no drone cover, the commandos begin to improvise. And in a boarding operation, to improvise is to die tactically. At 0522 and 50 seconds, the screening boat veers slightly. Small error, but enough. The ladder boat loses its cover for 2 full seconds. 2 seconds in which it is completely exposed to the Seahawk sensors, the bridge cameras, and the deck machine guns. The situation went from bad to catastrophic for Tehran. The hunters had just become the prey, and they did not yet know it. At 0523 hours, the distance collapses below 365 meters, and the U.S. Navy plays its final card. The captain speaks 2 words: warning shots. A mounted M2 Browning 50 caliber machine gun opens fire in short, disciplined bursts. Not at the boat, not at the men. At the water just ahead of the bow. The rounds strike like steel hammers, raising white columns of sea. The spray bursts across the Iranian bow in violent curtains. The boat hesitates half a second and keeps coming. That tells the crew everything. This is not bravado. It is intent. The captain does not hesitate. Disable the engine. The next burst is tighter. Surgical. The rounds stitch the stern quarter. On the 3rd hit, the outboard motor casing bursts in a bright, ugly flash of metal and vapor. Black smoke shoots upward. The boat yaws violently to starboard, stripped of clean thrust, and slams sideways into the destroyer's churned wake. There, the entire attack collapses. The bow lifts, the ladder breaks loose on one side. A commando lunges for the handrail and misses, crashing shoulder to shoulder with another man as the boat rolls over the broken water. The grappling hook never leaves the deck. Behind the screening boat tries to close the gap on its own. The Seahawk pivots, descends still lower, and strikes the second craft with a rotor wash so brutal that the bow bounces offline. The message is unmistakable in every direction. One more push and this gets worse. But the real humiliation comes after. At 0524, the electronic warfare operator speaks from the CIC new radar sweep bearing 027, possible observer drone. The captain understands immediately. The commandos were never the full plan. They were the first layer. Behind them was a surveillance drone and coastal radar, waiting to capture the moment of American failure for propaganda. But the moment never comes. The destroyer corrects 5 degrees to the right. Small movement, enormous effect. It exits laterally from the Iranian kill box before the second layer can close. At 0527, the drone turns north. The 2 surviving boats flee. The radar sweep fades. The pride of the Revolutionary Guards is shattered by the overwhelming technology of the West. They showed their cards. The U.S. Navy showed them a real ladder. At 0536 hours, the sun is already above the horizon. The American destroyer keeps its course, hull dry, deck intact, boarding denied. Iranian losses are clear. 1 Boghammer boat, disabled engine destroyed, left adrift with 4 commandos aboard and their cameras off. American losses 0. Not 1 sailor injured, not 1 casing wasted out of purpose. But the real Iranian defeat is not measured in floating scrap. It is measured in data. Every commando movement, every spacing between boats, every radio transmission, every supporting radar sweep, every turn of the observer drone, all of it was recorded in American systems. They came to steal a propaganda moment. They left handing the U.S. Navy a complete manual of how they fight when they think they have the advantage. The strategic lesson is brutally simple in the gray zone. Proximity is a bilateral exchange. The closer you get, the more you reveal. This is dominance without spectacle. Do you think next time the Iranians will try something different or repeat the same pattern? Leave your prediction in the comments. If you believe in the silent discipline of the U.S., maybe hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next analysis. Note, this scenario is a dramatized recreation based on real tactical patterns documented in the Strait of Hormuz. The sensors are active, the board is set, stay alert, and do not lose sight of the horizon. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next deck.